Hello and welcome. This is Redditosker, and today I would like to discuss From Software's controversial decision to remove in Elden Ring the ability to invade hosts solo. Now, originally I was going to make continuous videos about this forever till I ran my channel into the ground, but I don't think that's going to be necessary, because since yesterday I've been keeping an eye on social media, Reddit, Twitter, and such, and it seems to me that the community has more or less come to a consensus. While it's true that there is a significant amount of the player base that simply don't like PvP and don't like invasions in general, even most of those people agree that hosts should be able to opt into getting invaded by themselves should they so choose. This seems to be the point that we can all kind of agree on, regardless of how you feel about PvP in general. I did a poll on my channel, and I spent a bit of time looking at different polls on Reddit, and pretty much every poll that I've seen has more or less the same result. The player base is split about 50% one way and 50% the other way, if you give them two options. But if you give them an option where they can say, leave it how it is, but also give hosts the option to opt in to solo invasion should they want it, then that option almost always gets a huge number of votes. So I think we're all kind of on the same page. So considering that there's a solution that we can all mostly agree with, I don't feel it's necessary for me to continue harping on this subject. I'm fairly certain that From Software is going to see the massive buzz this has been generated on Reddit and other places, and they'll implement either this solution that has been proposed or something similar to it, something that would allow me to choose to be invaded solo. Of course, if I see anything that makes me think otherwise in the future, I will get back on this, because this is really an important feature to me, especially during the early days after a game's release. At that time, there isn't a meta yet, or at least it hasn't been discovered or established, and so the invaders are tentative. They don't know any more than you do, and they're just as scared of you as you are of them. I don't really like playing with phantoms, especially not through my first playthrough, and so if Elden Ring decides to keep the current system, it's going to be a rather lonely experience for me, never getting invaded at all. Now that said, if it does happen, and it would be a tragedy if it does happen, I think it's important to put the proper blame where it belongs, and that's the invaders themselves, or more specifically, the twinks. The term twink refers to players who stay at a low soul level, but go out into higher level areas, get higher level equipment, and then use that equipment to invade and grief low level players that don't have access to that stuff yet. Like I said earlier, this isn't really a problem during the early days of the game. Everybody is new, nobody knows more than anybody else. But as the game ages, this becomes a real problem. It can get to the point where the only people that are left invading in the lower level areas are twinkers, and many of the people that are hosts are twinking as well, as a counter. So even if you intend to be an honorable invader, and don't use something that you shouldn't have access to at that point in time in the game, you're likely to also come across hosts that are twinking, expecting you to be twinking, and will kill you and point down at you as well. It's a real race to the bottom problem. It's so bad that I have trouble introducing friends to Dark Souls these days, because I also recommend the PvP system, but if they go through the early levels, they're just going to get smashed over and over, all the way past the point where they're no longer in the early levels. It's not so bad once you get past level 40, 50, 60, but during that but that's most of the game. That's almost the entire first playthrough. So they often have a really terrible experience and can't appreciate Dark Souls, which is the biggest tragedy, but then they also can't appreciate the PvP system. So with all that said, I think the reason that From Software is making this decision, or at least testing the waters with this decision, to not allow invasion unless the host is already co-oping, specifically because of twinks, specifically because of this problem, and the problems that this problem generates. Like I was talking about in my last video, I believe that From Software has a design goal with invasions. They are outsourcing level design to other players, to invaders, and it's their intention that by giving hosts all these massive advantages, that the invader lose most of the time. But because of twinking, and just the general large body of experience that PvPers have, the intended experience that I believe From Software wants for its hosts often goes unrealized. Invaders are supposed to lose at least most of the time, but that's not what's happening. And often this isn't even a situation where you can just tell the player to get good if they lose. This isn't a get good thing. Even if the host is 3 or 4 times as good as the invader, they often still can't win because of the things that the invader has brought with him. The invader will often have a dark hand, exploding bolts with Avelins, heavy armor that you can barely do any damage to. They'll pump all of their stats into vitality, which is something that many people don't do, and then use raw or fire weapons so that their damage isn't based on their stats. The invader will almost always have a fully upgraded Estus, and the Estus will have the maximum number of uses. So I don't want to hear this get good shit when it comes to twinkers. Because no matter how good you are, you'll often break your weapons before you actually can do enough damage to kill them, because of how much health they have and how much they can heal. And that's not me exaggerating. I've broken my weapon hitting an invader and not been able to kill him. So no, get good is not an appropriate response to this problem. So, because the current state of affairs in PvP, in Invasions, is contrary to what From Software's vision is of how it should go, I believe that's the real reason that they're implementing this co-op-only invasion system. Or at the very least why they're trying to do that, why they're testing the waters and seeing our reactions to that. And if I'm being honest, we deserve it. It is a real shame what has happened in the early levels of Dark Souls 3, and it's not just Dark Souls 3. This has always been the case. Twinking was even worse in Dark Souls 1. Pyromancy, lightning, and fire, I believe, had nothing to do with scaling. So you just get these people at level 30 or something, with a max pyromancy flame. And in the early release of Dark Souls, the first release, there was no weapon matchmaking system. So something that they implemented later on is, if your weapon is upgraded too far above the person you're trying to invade, you can't invade them. You can only invade people whose weapon is upgraded to a certain degree, within your own. But back then, there was no such system. And so a max level person with maximum upgraded armor, maximum upgraded everything, could invade a normal level 10 person that had no access to any of that. And then they have the gall to do a point down or a well what is it, or whatever insulting emote that they want to. I am absolutely certain that real property damage has been done because of these invaders. Somebody has broken their controller, somebody has broken something in their house because of these people. So even though I'm completely in favor of invasions, and I desperately want to be invaded myself, I do want to invade, but mostly I want to be invaded myself as I play the game. But even though that's my position, if a choice was put to me between continuing things as they are and having these twinkers ruin the experience for so many people, there's a lot of people that just did not get to either have a proper PvP experience and don't like PvP because of them, or they don't like the game in general because of them. So if the option was co-op only invasion or leave things as they are, even I would say co-op only invasion is a better choice, as much as it hurts to say that. But thankfully I don't think those are our only options. The proposed solution that the community has mostly settled on is a lot better than that, I think. This way everybody gets access to the things that they like. I think that even if you don't like PvP, you shouldn't try and restrict my ability to get invaded. I want to get fucked up. I want to have a clever invader hide in like a shallow pool of water using an emote, or tall grass using an emote. That's always fun. I want to see them use a weird weapon I've never seen, and be like, oh, I wonder how you get that. Or even have them discover a combo between spells and weapon usages that will lock you into an attack animation and trying to figure out what exactly they're doing. Or sometimes it's even fun when you're invading somebody and you realize that they found an invisible wall that you didn't know about, and so now you know where that invisible wall is. That's cool as hell. So for the moment I have faith that Big Papa Miyazaki is not going to do this to me. He's going to change his mind on this and give us all the things that we want and deserve. But anyway, that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.